I know the lighting's not the best, but bear with me. I'm at work, trying to work with what I've got and maximize my time. Paramedics who are going into critical care transport for the first time are usually pretty intimidated by lab values. It's something that really isn't taught in paramedic school. And for the novice, seeing a fishbone diagram and a whole bunch of trending lab values can be very intimidating. What do the numbers mean, and what the hell are you supposed to do with those numbers? You can memorize normal ranges. You can make flashcards to help commit those ranges to memory. But in my opinion, rote memorization is not a good strategy to learn lab values. Take the basic of all lab panels, the basic metabolic panel or BMP, and the complete blood count, CBC. Look at each component being analyzed and learn what it's responsible for. What happens if that value is low? What happens if the value is high? In the CBC, what is hemoglobin? I think we all know what hemoglobin is, but what does it mean if it's low? What do platelets do? And what does it mean if the platelets are too high, or what could be going on if the platelets are too low? If your BUN or creatinine elevated, what does that mean? And what could be causing that? Is it a chronic renal thing, or is it an acute renal thing, like a pre-renal failure due to shock? My recommendation is to learn the BMP and the CBC down pat. And then you can go into belly labs, coags, different types of enzymes, SED rates, autoimmune things, and so on and so on. When you start to tackle lab values by reviewing what each component means and what abnormalities in those components mean, you will find that this stuff isn't as unfamiliar as you thought it was. It's all stuff from paramedic school pathophysiology that you have learned before. What do white blood cells do? What is potassium responsible for? What happens to the body with sodium derangements, etc., etc. Yeah, you might have to refresh yourself with some of the stuff, but you're going to find that lab values and the concept behind them really is not new stuff. As far as learning normal ranges, in my opinion, this is one of those things that you're eventually going to pick up the more you do it. Kind of like a baby learning to talk. The more transports you do and the more charts you review and the more lab values you look at, before you know it, you're going to look at a value and you're going to say, hey, that looks out of range to me. And then you're going to check the reference ranges that are there on the form, and you're going to get a hit of dopamine when you go, hey, I was right. It's out of range. Hey, I know how to interpret these. I think that you should look at lab values that are supplied in the chart for every single patient that you transport, especially early in your critical care transport career. Not only is it good to do, good patient assessment, but I equate it to learning lung sounds. Until you assess them 1,000 times, you're not going to get really good at discerning what is normal versus abnormal. And as far as checking reference ranges, it's easy because these days, most lab value printouts have normal ranges next to that value. And if that wasn't easy enough, abnormal values will have an H or an L next to them for high and low. And if the value is really bad, it'll have a C next to it for critical finding. So let's say you're transporting an alcoholic patient with a subdural hematoma and rhabdo, and the patient was found in his residence after not being heard for a couple of days. You're looking at lab values and you see that his sodium is 128. And you think to yourself, that seems low. You look at the reference range and confirm your suspicions. Too damn low. You know that the hyponatremic patient is prone to seizures. You also know that you don't want to start just dumping sodium into the patient because that can be very dangerous and can and will cause an osmotic demyelination syndrome. So you take note of the value and you review in your brain or on reference guides or on a protocol app on your phone what you're supposed to do if the patient with hyponatremia starts seizing. Now, some of you are probably wanting to learn lab values for the FPC or the CCPC test, and you may be thinking, hey, Mike, I don't have time to just keep doing transports and learning labs over the course of months to years. And I get that, but I still don't think that it is necessarily feasible. Maybe for some out there, there are brainiacs like that out there. I don't think that it's feasible and effective to learn, this is the range for chloride. This is the range for red blood cells. This is the range for BUN. I mean, my brain does not work like that. And honestly, if you don't understand the concepts behind those ranges and what they mean, then you're just learning useless information. But there are, as far as learning lab values and memorizing them, especially for your test, there are some values that are pretty immediately important over others. All right, glucose. Do I need to go over glucose? I hope I don't need to go over glucose. I'm not going over glucose. You should know that. But I would definitely learn these values, both the ranges and what it means when their values are deranged. And I'm not shitting on the other values. I'm not crapping on calcium or chloride, not at all. Definitely vital to know, definitely vital to assess. If you don't have any of those elements, the patient might die. They're very, very important. I'm just saying that I would make flashcards and learn these big ones because they tend to pop up on the FPC and CCPC exam all the time.